Blessed are the strong, but flexible. As some of you know, there are a set of teachings from the Christian scriptures called the Beatitudes. They begin with the phrase, "Blessed are." And they generally focus on a spirit of humility, mercy, compassion. And we've all heard of the other suggested beatitude. Blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be bent out of shape. I started to talk about that, but I decided to add strength with it because I felt like it would give it a little more backbone, okay? By the time I finish today, I hope I convince you or encourage you to add some flexibility. If strength is your strong suit, and if flexibility is your strong suit, and you don't have as much courage as some others, we're just going to pray that you add a little strength to your repertoire. Buddha, over 2,000 years ago, after experimenting both on a life of indulgence and then a life of self-denial and strictness, finally decided the middle path between the extremes was more appropriate for him and his life. He felt like that was the way to have a fulfilling life. There's a company in Germany that makes a fishing line called Stroft. Their marketing strategy is to tout the strength of the line, letting you know it won't break, ensuring you it's strong yet flexible and will glide smoothly in the water when you have a fish on the hook, never breaking. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Strength is one of the 12 faculties that were identified by the co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore. He identified it as the ability to endure, stay the course, persevere. And the affirmation that he suggested for strength is, I have the strength to accomplish all that is mine to do. Strength is often associated with our back. We know that. When we are talking about a person who has moral strength of character, we say they have backbone. Charles Fillmore felt that our power of strength is centered in our lower back. And Dr. Robert Knapp, who has researched Mr. Fillmore's teachings and has worked with the 12 powers as a medical doctor since 1974, and I don't know if he still is now, but he was when I read about him. He agrees, and he further extended our strength location in the body to the whole spine. He compares our spine to a tree trunk, strong enough to weather storms and flexible enough to bend, but not break. I love that. I love that thought. And the willow tree. Does anyone have a willow tree in their yard? Anyone? Do you? Oh, they're lovely, aren't they? Aren't they lovely? Where I grew up in East Tennessee, as a matter of fact, the school I went to the elementary school was Willow Brook, because of the beautiful brook that came through, surrounded by just dozens of beautiful willow trees. So I've always had a love of willow trees. The willow tree has long been a symbol of both strength and flexibility. The willow tree finds its strength, stability, and structure from its trunk, the foundation that stands firm against the storms. The branches are flexible and strong, moving with the wind without being destroyed. The leaves represent the balance, the harmony, and the growth we experience through these storms of life and love. The willow tree gives us hope, a sense of belonging, safety, and the ability to let go of pain and suffering. The image of the willow tree is a path to stability, hope, and healing. Now, we all know that being sturdy is a good quality. I know I admire that. I always have. I've admired it in others. I've always admired that. And it's often comforting to those around us, but there are probably more times in our lives when we might benefit more from being flexible, from being soft with life, working with life, not against it. There's a reading from the big book of AA that says this, and any of you that are members of that organization will remember it as I read it. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, I find it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me, and can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. The willow accepts life as it is, even when it's rough. And then there's some trees that are rigid, and they break with the storms, don't they? The storms of life. Being rigid gets us nowhere except eventually broken. A prime example of hardness imagery that's woven into many words intended to be positive may be a word like strong or tough. What does that bring to mind? It's not what I'm talking about today, is it? We want to be strong and tough, to be able to handle all life's trials and tribulations without cracking or breaking. And inner strength, and I suspect when we talk, I believe next week is Mother's Day, is it? When we talk about Mother's Day, I'll invite a few people to say a few words about their mother if they'd like. And I'll bet we're going to hear a lot of words about inner strength and courage, aren't we? Inner strength, that's something that we do admire. So sometimes the words, though, that we use for strong or tough can mean something like we hunker down, we grit our teeth, we bear it, something like that. We are tough, we power through at all times. And the short-term result may be good, but the long-term result of spending a life that way, powering through, will not be satisfying. You must be strong but gentle, strong but flexible, and to use this earlier cliche, the tree that doesn't bend breaks. And a hard tree can endure a lot. But when a strong wind blows, it cracks and falls over. Spiritual teacher Brene Brown talks of armor. We put on armor to protect ourselves, to avoid hurt. This one man said this used to be a way of life for him. It can be a survival mechanism that just kicks in automatically. And Brene Brown also says, when you cut off your feelings, the good and the bad, you can't isolate and block out specific types of feelings, or you shouldn't. That will only lead to failure if you're going to be strong and not feel anything. And the ability to be strong yet flexible is an art. It's a gift. It is a superpower that each of us has inside. So the trunk and the roots represent strength, stability, structure. The branches are flexible, resilient, and strong, bending with the wind without being destroyed. And the leaves represent flow, balance, and harmony. I had this little medallion I put on this morning because it represents the tree of life. And so many of us, if we have studied yoga, the various forms of activities and mindfulness, we are taught at different times. There's a tree pose, as a matter of fact, and to breathe up through our roots. As a matter of fact, you can tell a lot about how someone holds themselves, much like a tree. Anybody ever been familiar with or studied body language? You know what I'm talking about. You can see by the way a person stands primarily if they have confidence in themselves, or if they're maybe overconfident, a little haughty. And we certainly know those that are underconfident. As a matter of fact, a narcissist can pick them out. They may not do it intentionally, but they know, because the person will have rounded shoulders and they'll try to make themselves disappear. Pay attention to body language. You all know what I'm talking about. It's those small nuances that we've learned all of our lives. And with our intuition and paying attention, you can learn a lot by that. So I would just encourage anyone that has the habit of slumping their shoulders and trying to hide themselves and be small, hold those shoulders back. I remember when I was a young person, that was part of what you learned from your parents. Stand up straight. Hold those shoulders back. Did anyone else have parents like that? I certainly did. And it shows how you're going to show up to the world. Self-confident or not. Flexible. That's important too. We all know what the world is like when we're not flexible, right? Not going to give in. Will not give in. I'll tell you, how many of us would survived marriage? Just give you an example. If you weren't willing to give in. I like a really tidy house and everything in its place and everything orderly. And for me to have lived with Dan for more than 4 decades is amazing. He says I'm going to keep pushing him into his corner until he's out the back door. But I haven't done that. Amazingly, we have worked that out. And he has his untidy little corner over there with his papers strewn everywhere, and you can't find a place to put your coffee cup because of everything he's got sitting there. And I have to hold myself back when he's out of town. It's just almost impossible. You just about have to chain me down because I need to rearrange his stuff. And the last time I did, something was lost, and he's still accusing me of it, although I know I didn't do it. I did not. But what would the world be like? Well, we've got some examples out there right now, haven't we, when it comes to inflexibility? And if you want to have world peace, if you want to have peace in your own home, you must be strong to say what's important to you. But you also must be flexible. Let it go. Be like the willow tree. Bend, bend. Okay, so this didn't work out. Another way will show itself. We've said this before. What is mine will know my face. Amen. Amen. With a soul on fire. What is mine will come to me. I don't need to stress over it. I don't need to make others wrong. I need to let go what needs to be let go and accept. But also, importantly, not to cower to another, because I have a God-given right too to be the person that I am. So the one man I was referring to earlier talked about his life, and he had been so strong. He had a hard armor. He had worked at the, he worked in the corporate world or the government world all of his life. He had been to the White House. He'd been to some of the big corporate meetings all over the world. And he finally said he just finally broke. It came in the way of illness he didn't expect, certainly didn't want it. He was a broken man. He could not continue on with this strong armor with which he had surrounded himself all of his life. He had to finally break down, let go of that hard shell, and become flexible. He said he really had to trust in God because he'd always pushed his way through life, never giving up. So Pema Chodron says, stop protecting your soft spot. Stop armoring your heart. Allow yourself to bend like a willow in the wind so that you will not break. I hope you'll remember that this week. Think about it when you find yourself taking a hard line on something, I'd ask you to take a moment to go within, to rethink, reconsider. Is there a way I could see this differently? And become the instrument of God that I'm meant to be. I would just encourage you to keep a flame in your heart with a soul on fire all week. And light your path wherever you go. Thank you for your time.